Hello, welcome to Pragim Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 36 of ASP.NET video series. In this session, we'll learn about the wizard control in ASP.NET. Before continuing with the session, I strongly recommend to watch part 35 of this video series where we have discussed about the multi-view control. Wizard control enables creation of multi-step user interface. Wizard control provides with built-in previous next functionality. So what we want to do in this demo is that we want to create a wizard control, where we want to capture his personal details first, and then when I click the next button, I need to capture his contact details, and when I click next, show the summary, and then when we click finish, we want to save that to a database and then show a confirmation page. If you remember, in part 35 of this video series, we have achieved this exact same thing using a multi-view control. Now the difference between a multi-view control and a wizard control is that the multi-view control is a collection of multiple view controls, whereas a wizard control is a collection of multiple wizard steps, as you can see here. And another difference is when we use multi-view control, we have to provide these buttons, that we use to move between multiple views, go to step 2, go to step 1, or go to step 3. We have to provide these buttons, but whereas with wizard control, the wizard control is going to provide those buttons for us. They are inbuilt, within the wizard control. Based on the step type, the wizard control identifies when it has to show next, when it has to show previous, and when it has to show finish buttons. We'll actually look at that in a bit. Okay, so if you haven't watched part 35 of this video series yet, I would strongly encourage you to do so before continuing with this session, because if we understand how to work with a multi-view control, then it's pretty straightforward to work with the wizard control. So in this example, we are going to first capture the personal details and then his employee contact details, and then finally show the confirmation, and then when we click finish, save the data to a database and show a confirmation page. So a wizard is a collection of wizard steps, and the step type property of the wizard determines what buttons to show, whether it's start button, next, or previous, or finish buttons. Okay, let's flip to Visual Studio. Let's drag and drop a wizard control onto the web form. So we know that a wizard is a collection of wizard steps. Okay, now if you look at what we want to achieve, we want to have 3 wizard steps: personal details, and contact details, and finally the summary. So let's have 3 wizard steps. So let's copy this and paste it here. So we have 3 wizard steps, and on the first step I want to capture their personal details. Okay, and in the second step I want to capture their contact details, and finally on step 3 I want to capture the summary. We basically want to show the summary to the end user. So if we flip to the design mode, and we can see that there. Okay, so the steps are done, and the first step is basically to capture the personal details. Now we know that wizard step is going to provide these buttons to navigate between these wizard steps for us, so we don't have to write anything for that. But to capture their first name, last name, and gender, we need these text boxes and these texts within a table. So we need this HTML for that. So I already have that typed here just to save some time in typing. So if you look at this, I have a very simple HTML table here which has got 3 rows. And then within each TR I have 2 TDs. The first TD showing the text first name and then a text box to capture that. Similarly, I have text last name and a text box to capture last name. And then gender is a drop down list with 2 list items, male and female. So let's copy this and paste this in the first step of the wizard control. Okay, so I'm going to paste that there. And then if we flip to the design mode, look at that. This is shown in the first wizard step, and the next wizard step is basically show their contact details. And obviously we are going to get these buttons, but then we need the HTML to capture the email address and mobile number, 2 text box controls and the text, email address, and mobile number, and these are going to be present inside a table. So I have a table with style border 1 pixel, solid black, and then 2 TRs with 2 TDs within the each TR. TD email address text, and then text box to capture the email address, mobile number, and a text box to capture the mobile number. So copy this and then paste this in the second step of the wizard control. So let's flip to Visual Studio. So that's the first step of the wizard control. this is the step 2 contact details. So let's expand that and paste that here. Okay, so that's step 2. And finally, we want to show the summary. Again, we need the HTML for that, the label controls, and then the actual text here, first name, last name, etc. And these two headings here, personal details and contact details. And we have that here, the HTML. So there is another table. Let's copy this. By the way, all this HTML code will be available on my blog for you to copy and download it. Okay, so let's paste this in the third step of the wizard control. So that's it. We are done with the steps and the HTML that is required within each step. So if we run this now as it stands, so it should first show us the wizard step 1. Okay, so I enter my first name, let's say Mike Hancock, and then maybe his gender is male, and when I click this next button, look at that, it will automatically navigate us to the next step. If you remember in part 35 of this video series where we have discussed about multi-view control, we have to write the code for that explicitly, but wizard control knows what are the steps in that wizard in sequence, and then it navigates us to the correct step. And now I enter my email address here, let's say mike@mike.com, and maybe our phone number 0123456789, and when I click this next button, it will take me to the summary page. But then look at this, it is not showing or remembering those details. So obviously for this we have to write code. So when I navigate from step 2 to step 3, then I have to pull the details from the controls that I have entered data, from step 1 and step 2, and populate that on this final step in the label controls that we have here. Okay, so let's do that now. So let's go to the code behind page, and if you remember, when I actually click the next button, that's when I have to do that. So obviously this wizard control has an event next button click, which gets fired whenever you click the next button. Okay, so double click that to generate the event handler. And if you remember, we don't have to do anything on the first step. When I move from personal details to contact details, we don't really have to do anything. But then when I move from contact details to summary, that's when we need to capture the text that we have entered in these controls and then show them within the label controls here. So if you look at the step index, here the step index is 0 because that's again 0 index based. 0 is this step is the first step, and this is the second step. So 0, 1, 2. So the step index, when the step index is 2, that's when we want to write the code to retrieve data from these text box controls and populate these label controls. So let's do that now. So if look at this wizard navigation event args. So when you are navigating across the wizard, this object is going to give us the next step index and the current step index. So if the next step index that we are going to go is equal to 2, that means we are going to go to the confirmation page. Then what we want to do, we want to populate first name label with the text that is present in txt first name text box. So txt first name dot text, and similarly lbl last name dot text is equal to text from the last name text box, and lbl gender dot text, the gender is coming from the drop down list, so drop down list dot selected value, and we want the mobile number dot text is equal to, that's coming from txt mobile number dot text, and finally lbl, what else we have, the mobile number and email address. So lbl email dot text is equal to txt email dot text. That's it. Okay, so now when we run this, when we actually get to that step, it's going to populate those label controls for us. So let's fill in the data. So first name, let's say Mike, last name Hancock, male, click next, email address, let's say mike@mike.com, and his mobile number. Click next. Okay, so it's filling in all the details for this. But a little odd thing is I don't want this side this side tab to be present here. I want the sidebar to be on the top, aligned always. Is there a way to customize that? Absolutely. Let's see how to do that. I go to the wizard control, and this is called the sidebar of the wizard control. We'll talk about all those, how to customize this wizard control in the next session of this video series. So go to the properties, and then there is a property called style, sidebar style, where you can actually configure all the properties here. So sidebar style here. And now all I want to do is the vertical alignment. I don't want that to be in the center. I want to be it on the top so that it appears there. Okay. And another thing here, when I click finish, I want to save this data to a database table and go to the confirmation page. But now when I click that, nothing is happening there basically. Okay. So let's see what to do when I click that finish button. Again, there is an event that this wizard control raises when you click that finish button, and it's called finish button clicked event. So finish button click event, double click that. Now we will write the ADO.NET code to save the data to a database table, and finally we'll navigate to the confirmation page. So first let's have the confirmation page here. So to the project, add a new item, web form, and let's call this confirmation.aspx. Click add. That should add the confirmation page, and then maybe here we'll have a big H1 saying data saved to the database. Okay, so we're not going to actually write the code to save to the database table. That's ADO.NET code, and we know how to do that. We have discussed about ADO.NET in ADO.NET video series. If you haven't watched that, I would strongly encourage you to do so before continuing with the session. So response.write, we want to navigate to that page, confirmation.aspx. That's all, we are done. So now when we run this, we'll be able to navigate on the finish button. We will navigate to confirmation page. So first name Mike, Hancock, mail, click next, enter the email address mike@mike.com, enter his phone number, click next. Look at that. And when I click finish, I go to the response dot, what did we do there? Oh, response dot redirect, not response dot write. So let's redirect the user. So obviously when we get to the confirmation page, we will be redirected. Okay, let's fill in some data there. Click next, email address, mobile number, and I click next there. It shows those details. When I click finish, data saved to the database. We are on the confirmation page. And the interesting thing is, look at that, the browser button, the browser is actually remembering the history. It's treating all these as different pages, but if you notice the URL, it's just one web form. So it's very similar to how we have worked with multi-view control. On this slide, you can find resources for ASP.NET C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.